Hi, kia ora, and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have really inspiring conversations with artists living in and from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Mandy Yakic. Hello, I hope you're having a beautiful day, somewhere gorgeous. This week I'm speaking with Julie Battisti. Julie is a painter who grew up in Melbourne, Australia, and moved to New Zealand with her husband in 2017, settling first in Rawene in the North Island, then going on to make Dunedin her home. Julie's paintings currently have two significant themes, flowers and clouds. Both are studies of light and texture. In this episode, Julie shares how she sources and chooses the flowers she paints, how she creates her floral compositions, and her floral painting process, from underpainting and taking photographs to painting the final details, and how she approaches colour. We discuss her cloud paintings and how they have initially come from feeling homesick, helping her to feel more connected to her friends and family on the other side of the Tasman. We explore how she manages work for her gallery with very regular commissions, how she connected with the two New Zealand galleries who represent her, that is Gallery Novo in Dunedin and Parnell Gallery in Auckland, and why she's no longer represented in Melbourne. Also, we talk about how she manages these two very distinct themes in her practice. Julie is also the host of the Creative Kind podcast, where she explores creative questions with the help of fellow artists and art professionals who share insights and inspiration with listeners who, like Julie, are passionate about creativity in all its forms. As fellow podcast hosts, we talk about our podcasts, why we started them, and our plans for the future of our shows. It was really so nice and such a treat to connect with Julie. We have a fantastic conversation, and it was wonderful to hear her talking, for a change, about her beautiful art practice. I highly recommend the Creative Kind podcast. I think my audience will very much enjoy it. So check it out on Apple Podcasts and all your other favourite podcast apps. Enjoy this episode. I certainly did. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
It's so lovely to meet you, even though we're meeting through a computer screen. It is great to actually see you and put a face to the name and, have a little bit of a chat one-on-one, which is so nice. And I do feel like I already know you quite well from following you on Instagram and listening to your amazing podcast. So a very big, warm welcome to the Creative Matters podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on. I was saying before, I feel, and I don't know if it's surprising or not, but very nervous coming onto someone else's podcast. Being in the other seat is quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit strange, isn't it? I remember when we had the podcast episode where Tanya interviewed me, and that was also quite strange. So, I totally know how you feel. I feel slightly nervous myself because I'm interviewing another podcaster, which is kind of weird, but good. So you are living now in Dunedin and you've been there since 2017. What do you love about Dunedin?
I think it's a great little city. And it's interesting because we went from Melbourne to Rawene, which is a tiny little town of about 500, to Dunedin. And so Dunedin felt like quite a big move. And so I feel like it sort of cushioned if I'd gone from Melbourne to Dunedin, I maybe wouldn't have appreciated everything that Dunedin has to offer. But it is a beautiful city. The lifestyle for me and my kids is fantastic, and my husband, of course. It's got so much in terms of natural beauty, and it's got everything that you'd want from a bigger city, but with like no traffic and beautiful views and access to a lot of places. I think the only downside is it can be a little bit hard to get home to Oz. So it's always at least 2 flights. When me and my husband first started dating, there was direct flights between Dunedin and Melbourne, and I'm just crossing my fingers that they come back one day.
Oh, really? So you have to go back up to Auckland, is that?
Often we try and go through Christchurch, or we'll drive to Queenstown and fly from there. Like you sort of just take what you can get these days.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting that they've reduced that flight. It's a shame. And how did you find coming from Melbourne? I mean, we'll talk about why you came to New Zealand, but it must be quite a big change, especially the weather. Although I think Melbourne isn't always the best weather. Is that right?
Oh, do you know they're similar but different? I mean, my family finds it really cold here, but actually, I find that the heat is similar. It's a really beautiful dry heat. It doesn't get really humid here that often. It is colder, but it's kind of, I don't know, you get a couple of snowy days in winter and that's really beautiful. And I don't know, you kind of take what you can get. I find that
Yeah.
the the sunny summer days here are just amazing. I think that Dunedin's really underrated in summer. And often that's when all the students have left and the weather is amazing. And I'm like, this is hidden gem that nobody knows about.
Yeah, yeah, it is really, isn't it? I guess it's not really en route to anywhere exactly, so it's maybe not visited as often as other main parts of New Zealand.
Yeah, I think so. And the beaches are always so quiet. So we can go to a beach here and there'll be sea lions, and you can go and there'll be no one else around. And they are just so phenomenally beautiful.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah. That's the great thing about New Zealand, I think, that, we have so many beautiful beaches, and so often you go there and there's barely anybody on the beach.
it's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. Okay, so we are fellow podcast hosts, which is really interesting, actually. I just can't wait to kind of pick your brain a little bit. So, if the audience, the lovely listeners, can indulge us for a minute, we're just going to talk a little bit about your podcast and then, the things that we have in common and why we are both making these podcasts. So, you have the Creative Kind podcast, and you also did have Fail Like an Artist with Phoebe Gander. So, can you tell us a little bit about the Creative Kind podcast and why you have created it?
Well, I really enjoyed the sorts of conversations that we were having through Fail Like an Artist. And I think that forced me to examine my practice in a way that I probably really hadn't before. Like reflecting on my own failures and practice had not been a large part of what I do. And I found that really valuable. And I think what I wanted to do next was really broaden that conversation out and learn what I could from other people and see what they had to say. And I was quite keen to keep building a community and I guess create the opportunity in their time for other sorts of conversations. Like I feel like when I left art school, I had no idea how to be an artist. And I think that's where podcasts like yours and like The Good Oil and like Willie's and talking with painters really get into the breadth and depth of an artist's life, and you can sort of see the paths that they've taken. And I think I wanted to do something that would sit alongside that but dig into one area. And I think it's really wonderful when you're listening to podcasts like yours and you get about 30 minutes in and people kind of relax and get comfortable with talking. I kind of was hoping to get to that bit and delve into like that juicy topic that everyone's got something that they're really passionate about.
Yeah.
And I wanted to spend a bit of time and getting a diversity of opinions out there. So, I mean, that's what excites me. I'm still sort of learning what it's going to become. But what about you? What made you want to start Creative Matters?
It was basically just an interest, a personal interest of mine. I've always been really, really interested in New Zealand art. Working at the Auckland Art Gallery gave me a sort of real taste for art in general, but also in particular New Zealand art, which I've just been fascinated by. I just love the idea of people being able to share their journey. And I was always really interested in the background stories as well. For me, that's a big part of this podcast is kind of talking about people's journeys and how they got to where they're at. I'm really interested in also creating a resource that can be quite educational for people and help them on their path, on their creative path, and help them to make decisions about their creative careers. And I think that's why I like to talk about secondary school and, the decisions people have made after that. So hopefully it can help high school art students. I love the idea of supporting artists to speak about their work and speak about themselves. And it's just, I like all those elements of it, really, and then giving the listeners an interesting story which might inspire them or motivate them or teach them something, all those things. So I just felt like it was a great thing to do. And I spent a couple of years thinking I'd love to do it, but didn't feel like I really could because you sort of think about how am I going to fit this into my life, into my business without necessarily earning lots of money through it, and then I just got to the point where I thought, nope, I'm just going to do it anyway and see what happens.
I find that a lot of podcasters say that they'd thought about it for a long time. Like I started recording interviews with people like 8 or 9 years ago when we were in Rawene, and there was a few local artists around, and I thought I'm going to do something with it. I'm going to create a blog and I didn't do anything with it. And I don't even know if I've still got those interviews, which is a real shame. But I think it took me this long to get the confidence to do it. And I don't know that I could have without Phoebe to start with. Like she gave me a lot of confidence in that area, and it was sort of became easier to do it on my own.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's so being a guest, I think people don't, it can be really nerve-wracking, and being a host, it takes a lot of time and effort. But
Yeah,
it's so rewarding.
it is so rewarding. I think, the guests speaking are sort of being vulnerable and exposing something of themselves. And sometimes, people talk about things that they haven't really even clarified in their own minds. It's almost like a therapy session sometimes. And then for me as well, I'm being vulnerable. I'm in this you know, closely connected with somebody I don't know. And then we're talking about really quite intimate, important things. So it's quite an amazing experience. And I found at the beginning I did get quite nervous beforehand. But now I just absolutely look forward to every time, every session because it's just like the most enlightening, beautiful conversation. And it really truly does enrich my world.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So we're very lucky. And we hope that the listeners enjoy the Creative Matters podcast and the Creative Kind podcast. And I love the way that your podcast really sort of hones in on particular themes or ideas. So how do you work that? Do you send questions to the person?
I do generally I think, so I trialed it with a few friends first, and I found that sending a bit of an outline of here's a few questions that we could talk about. And I always say, look, if we go on a tangent and talk about something else for the hour, that's absolutely fine. But here's a few guide questions for what we might want to touch on, I guess, to try and get them, at least we're sort of thinking on a similar path. But often I find the things, as you said before, the things that come out might not be what that person even anticipated thinking about. And that's, I think, sometimes where the joy is as well. So there can be some really surprising conversations that come out that you never thought would happen.
Yeah, which is beautiful. Yeah, and I do feel like it's an honor that somebody is trusting me to help them tell their story, and the thought that they can then pass that story down to their children or, it's a lasting legacy, which is, it's a privilege to be involved with something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a world where time is really hard to come by, and the trust factor as well in terms of telling a long form story, I think it is a privilege to have people come on and give you their time and their words. I think and I think it is just as hard, sometimes if not harder, for emerging artists to talk about their work than people that have done it a few times before.
Yeah.
And so I really, really appreciate those people that have come on at the beginning of their career, because I find that it is hard when you're still figuring out what you're trying to say with your work to then talk about even just a particular issue to do with that on a podcast where you know that there are other people that are going to hear it. And it feels like I'm creating quite a wonderful, supportive community, but you can't help but think, are my thoughts going to get picked apart here? And what if someone doesn't agree with me? And I kind of think that's where all the great stuff is. If you're actually challenging people's opinions or putting something out there that maybe they hadn't thought there before. And even if you're putting something out there that they have thought, when people get that opportunity to think, oh my God, that happened to me too. Or, yeah, I agree. That's exactly how I think. And you kind of have that wee moment of, I'm not alone in this. So I
Yeah.
think whether you're saying something controversial or not, it doesn't actually matter because both avenues are beneficial for the audience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's all thought provoking. No matter what the opinion is, it's enough to make people think, which is good. Yeah. So, where do you think you're going to go with the podcast? What are your plans for the future?
I don't know. And I think there's real beauty in that. And for a person who is ridiculously planned, and I kind of like the fact that I'm just enjoying seeing what happens. I'm trying to plan a Christmas episode at the moment where I get a few people on at once, and we'll see what kind of weird Brady Bunch energy that brings. But uh, we'll see. I'm kind of excited to keep trialing a few things and see what sticks. And yeah, I'm just excited to keep the conversations going, I guess. What about you
Mm.
with Creative Matters? Have you got a long-term vision for it?
I just really want to keep going for a long time. I really want it to be sort of archiving social history, a part of social history in New Zealand. And I want to continue that. I also like the idea of coming back to talk to people 5 years on or 10 years on. I've also planned for next year in June, July, I'm going to have a show at Kumeu Arts, a group show with, I've invited all of my guests, and I've got 75 artists who've been on the show who are going to be part of that group show.
How
Um,
cool.
yeah, and that's the theme for that is connection. So I love the idea of bringing artists together so artists can meet other artists who've been on the show. Listeners can come and meet the artists or meet me. And then also connecting back to the actual podcast episode through the work, I think would be, yeah, quite an exciting prospect. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's so awesome. I don't know if you felt this way in your first year, if you remember what that was like. I felt this year this rush to get everyone um, signed up and on the books. And then I've just sort of reached that realization that I want to keep doing this for a long time. And so I don't need to rush and try and do every episode all at once, all this year. And that
Yeah.
some of it can and has to wait. And that I want it to, like you, I want it to be a long term thing where it can build and grow over time. And I think that's been one of the key lessons I've been learning over the last couple of years is that slowing down and seeing things as long-term projects is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, it's so good. And you're doing a fantastic job. I love your podcast. I find it really informative and interesting. And, another resource for different perspectives. And I love the way that you host your guests. So well done. But let's get on to talking about Julie Battisti. Can't wait to hear your story as she pulls a face. So, where did it all start? I know you were born in Australia. What, yeah, tell us a little bit about your life as a child and when you started discovering your creative side.
It was funny. I was talking to my mum in preparation for this the other week, and I said, "Was I a particularly creative kid?" And she was like, "No, not really. Like, not." It was just the normal, liked playing with paint at kindy, but not in a obsessive or I don't think I had any special skills. Like I was just splashing paint around. And even I'd say through primary school, I don't have any specific memories of being particularly good or skilled in that area. And I always find it amazing when I speak to artists and they think back, even when I was 6 or 7, I knew that I was going to be an artist because that wasn't me. I was floundering around just doing normal kid stuff, I think. Um, but I definitely found that art I think helped me create my identity as a teenager, probably in those, when I was maybe 14, 15 and really struggling to fit in, didn't know who I was, didn't know where to belong. The art room definitely gave me that sense of purpose, I think. And I was really lucky and fortunate to have a few really great art teachers who believed in me and pushed me and, you know, let us come in during lunchtime where there was heaters and coffee and that sense of warmth and community even back then.
Yeah.
And through high school, we had quite a small senior art class. I think there might have only been 6 of us. And we were all quite different students as well as in terms of personality type. And we would all meet up in the art room for these lessons. And they were just, I still have such fond memories of that time. And I still occasionally connect with my old art teacher, Nikki Demden. And I just have huge respect for her, for what she built in me, and what she exposed us to. And she'd take us out for these amazing excursions in the city to see art galleries and exhibitions. And I think she was trying to foster more than just teach us the curriculum. It was more creating a love of the arts.
How amazing is that? You know, art teachers, I think they are a special breed, and you just never forget people like that in your life.
Yeah, I think they can have such a strong and important influence on you. And I think when I hear stories of people that have not had that, when they've had art teachers that have put them down or crushed their dreams or make them feel less than, I feel even more lucky to have had that at that time. So
Yeah.
I think great teachers are so undervalued.
Yeah, absolutely. I think teachers in general are undervalued, unfortunately.
Oh,
Yeah,
amen.
anyway, we
Right.
won't start that.
We could
We
do an
won't go
hour
there.
just on that.
Yeah. So you left school and you studied fine art.
I did international relations as well,
That's
which is
right.
like
Yeah.
a mix of politics and languages, I guess.
Which is an interesting mix. Were you thinking I need a backup just in case I don't become an artist, or what were your thoughts?
I really don't know. I did 2 arts degrees, which technically don't really lead anywhere. Like, there's not a career, a clear career path through, well, not, there wasn't for me anyway. I think I just wanted to keep studying what I was interested in, and I loved art, and I really wanted to keep learning Italian, and I was really interested in politics and the way the world worked, and wanted to know more about that, but hadn't actually thought about, do I want a career in politics? And I think back now, and as much as it didn't take me anywhere career wise, I really enjoyed that time at uni. I enjoyed what I studied. Uh, I think I was just learning how to be a human still at that age. I think
Mm,
for a long time, I wished I'd gone and done a gap year and figured out who I was before I did 4 years of study on that particular thing.
yeah.
But I don't regret it anymore, because I think, look, so many people think something for a career path and then don't go anywhere with it. And I think, well, at least I really enjoyed it and learned a lot and made some amazing friends, and the combination was interesting. There weren't too many people doing visual arts as a combo, and the other combinations made a lot more sense. So a lot of people did arts and education, or arts and philosophy. I'd always enjoyed following 2 streams of thinking at the same time. Like, I'd
Yeah.
always enjoyed being challenged in a different way. And I thought they would be more interconnected. I always thought I would be doing my artwork would be some sort of a commentary on the politics of where I was. And it has probably never really been that. And that's okay too. But it took me
Yeah.
a while to get there. I kind of felt like I was falling short, like I was missing a trick for a long time. But I don't think that everything needs to marry up and have they don't always need to be enmeshed.
Yeah, and you're probably actually being informed by your learning at that time more than you realize further down the track. Yeah. So
Yeah.
your artwork at that point, was that could you see any similarities with the work that you're doing now?
No, not at all, really. It was really loose and gestural, way looser than it is now. And I was very much playing with having raw sections of canvas and having quite painterly areas and quite thick areas. It was a lot thicker than the paint that I was using. But I think I was still, and that's, I think, some of the joy at art school, and probably some of the bit I didn't embrace as much as I should have, is it's a great place for exploring and experimenting. And I think I'm glad I did that then, because it has led me to where I am now, even if it's not been a really direct line.
Yeah.
Um, and it gave me some great things to draw down on and to rely on. And um, yeah, it was definitely the start of something. I don't
Yeah.
think I really took it anywhere special during my uni days. I didn't leave uni and know where I was going or have a sense of my practice is this. And I think back now and I'm like, I was probably 21 when I finished. I started quite young. I must have only just been turning 18 my first year of uni. And you think, you don't know who you are at that stage, I don't think.
It's quite young, isn't it? Yeah, but it suits some people, but not really others. And so, what did you do after uni, and how did you get into your art practice?
I kept studying for a while. There was a safety in the university system, I think. So I didn't really know what to do when I left uni. I'd been offered to do my master's, but I kind of felt like I needed to figure out what I wanted to do before I took that next step. So I kept studying. I started doing it was a graduate diploma. It wasn't a fully structured. It was a couple of papers from a conservation and curatorship degree down at Melbourne Uni. And I loved it. And I could have kept studying that forever. And I got to do this great paper on on a painting that I'd always loved at the NGV. And I think I got to the point where I was like, if I spend my life thinking about and writing about other people's work, I don't know that I'll find space for my own work. And I also felt like I needed to just go out and live for a bit. Before I did that, I started my dip ed then and got past my first teaching round. And must have been 20, 21. I'm really bad with dates and ages, but I was young. And I remember teaching, my first placement was at a school that did only the last 3 years of school. And these students were barely younger than I was. And I remember thinking, I don't have any right to teach these kids. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So I went out and just started working, and I got a job working in admin for a fashion company. And then I kind of accidentally stayed in the fashion business for 10 years. So went from admin to becoming a planner to becoming an analyst, and met some amazing people. I've got some great friendships from that time. But it took me a while to find my way out of it. And I was still practicing, still painting, still going to life drawing classes and keeping that side of myself busy, but I had no direction with it. And I was working such long hours in my corporate job that I didn't have much time for it either. And I got to the point where I was probably quite unhappy in that job. I had to sort of find a way out. And so I finished my dip ed. I sort of quit my job and started contracting, so I had less hours at work, and gave myself enough time to do my dip ed. And then while I was teaching, I started developing more of a practice again. So it took me a while to fall back in to, and I think I needed to really want it, to really pursue it the way I did. So when I was teaching, I had a bit more time to paint. Although when your first year out of teaching is a lot, you're trying to figure out what a curriculum is and how to grade papers. And
oh, yeah. Were you teaching at high school?
Yes. Yeah. So I was teaching a variety of year levels from 7 to 12. So that's 8 to 13 in New Zealand. And loved it. And it was an amazing experience, and was painting at night. And I think that's when my long hours of night painting really took off.
You were teaching art at high school?
Yes. Yeah. I was qualified to teach geography and history, but I didn't get a job in that area. And so I just fell into teaching art and was really happy with that.
I wonder if that helped you to sort of get into your own work.
I think so. And look, I'd been painting. I'd put on one exhibition while I'd been working corporate, and it took a lot of effort. I think when I'd been getting home at like 8 or 9 at night from my corporate job, and then would paint until 2 or 3 and then get up at 7 and start the whole rigmarole again.
Oh my gosh, that's huge.
It was mental. I don't do those sorts of hours now.
No, but you still do work at night, don't you, often?
Yeah, and that's partly how I'm wired and partly what works for us at the moment. So it's a bit of both. But yeah, I think teaching allowed a bit more flexibility. I remember reaching the end of the teaching day when we were on rounds and it getting to 4 o'clock and everyone saying goodbye. And I remember thinking, we get to go home now. Because in all of my corporate jobs, it had been like the clock off time was 5, but nobody left until 6 or 7. And it wasn't unusual to stay at work until 9.
Really?
Oh, it was a bit mental. But I was also I'm always a little bit extreme with my pursuits, I think. I can't put that all on work, but it was definitely a little bit of a combination, I think.
Yeah. So in 2017, you came to New Zealand. What brought you from Melbourne to Rawene?
Well, my now husband had moved to Melbourne for a few years, for us, more or less. And also, so he'd gotten a job in Melbourne, and he'd spent 3 years there. And he'd put his medical training on hold, and you can only put it on hold for so many years. And so he had to go back and finish his training. And we had built quite a lovely lifestyle for ourselves in Melbourne. Like, I was enjoying teaching. He was enjoying teaching as well. And it was sort of like we were comfortable. And so when the choice came to move, it was like, oh, it's going to be, I think we were both ready for a bit of uncomfortable, if that makes sense, to be challenged. And he'd really wanted to do rural GP. So that's why, hence Rawene. But I guess the choice came then is, do I try and get qualified to teach in New Zealand, or do I just embrace trying to do this art thing more than just at night? And with Chris's rural GP position, the hospital paid for our accommodation. So we were given a small house in Rawene. And I sort of thought, oh, look, there's never going to be a better time than that to try it out for a few years when I don't have the thought of rent hanging over my head.
And you didn't have kids at that stage?
No kids, which also makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's so interesting. And he's a Kiwi, Chris?
Yes, yeah. So from not too far from you, from Warkworth originally, but then had spent, I don't know, good 10 years in Dunedin, and then a few years in Melbourne. So Rawene was sort of new for both of us. He'd been there before.
It's a very tiny part of New Zealand. Yeah, so then you moved to Dunedin and you continued with your full-time painting practice.
When we arrived in Dunedin, I was probably 6 months pregnant. And so it was Newtown, not a new job. Like, I'd been painting for a while by then. I found it difficult at first, I think. Just a lot of changes going on. I don't think I'd really clocked the fact that it hadn't really registered the change that was going to happen when I had a kid. And it's funny, a lot of people were like, I didn't know you were pregnant. And I wasn't showing it on my Instagram. It was, you go back, there's maybe one post where you can see that I'm actually pregnant. And I think I was clinging for dear life onto this identity that I'd built for myself as a full-time painter. And it took me a while to embrace the identity of being a mum as well, I think.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a huge shift, isn't it? But you do seem to manage being a mum. I know that there'll be really hard days, but you do show your audience your kids sometimes. You've got 2 children, is that right?
Yeah, I've got 2.
2 boys.
Yep.
Yeah. And they do appear now and then on Instagram, especially the little one, when you're trying to do a great video. And here he comes. I love that.
Yes. The back of someone's head is always appearing. It's like when you're having a conversation and it's often when I pick up the phone and my kids have been silent for ages doing their own thing, and I pick up the phone and all of a sudden they've got like 20 things they want to tell you right at that moment.
Yeah.
The same thing happens, I find, if I'm trying to film anything inside. You've got mum is always in the background.
I love the way you leave it in sometimes. It's very, very real, which is good. Can we start just talking about your practice, please? Do you mind just trying to explain or describe your work for people who haven't seen it before?
That's an interesting, difficult question, isn't it? I would say I paint clouds and flowers, and I really enjoy, and this is the thing, I make it difficult for myself. I like working really big, and I also like working really small. I would say they're realistic and not hyper-realistic. I really enjoy trying to capture light and texture. I find them really hard to describe. It's the same reason I always get stuck trying to describe anything in words, be it on Instagram or in an artist statement, or I feel like my visual language is stronger than
which is very typical for artists, I'd say. So just let's talk about the flowers first. You are probably very well known for your flowers and for your clouds, actually. Do you find that it is the same audience who are liking both, or do you feel like there's a different audience for each?
A bit of both, actually. When I first started doing the clouds, I thought it was going to be really different, and I thought that I might lose some of my audience. But actually, I find I've had some people buy both, which is always amazing to me and such a privilege. But I think, if anything, it has just broadened my audience because people come there for different reasons. Some things are naturally going to appeal. Like, some people are only interested, they're only there to see my florals, and vice versa with the clouds. but it's lovely. I love working on them both, and they are quite different in how I paint them and the techniques that I use. The flowers tend to be a lot more smaller, structured pieces that are a
But
lot more.
they can still be huge though. I've seen some really big ones of yours.
Yeah, they can be big, but they're made up of lots of small moments to me.
Right.
Whereas the clouds are more of an atmosphere thing. And the brushes I use are bigger, and the way I work tends to be a lot more layers of building up color. Um, but I enjoy that the variety really holds my interest and keeps me challenged. And in a world where you're always told to niche down and do one thing, I really enjoy the duality, and I don't know that I could just pick one. And I don't know that I'm done there. I'm not done with either of them as topics, but I don't know that they'll be the last either.
How do you decide what you're doing and when you're doing it?
I go through periods of being really intensely driven to create. So at the moment, I've got, I think, 5 flowers on the go and 2 clouds, and it tends to be one way or the other. So I'll be doing 3 clouds and 1 flower, or there's always a little bit of both. And it's just, it depends on the images that I've got. Like, which photo do I have to paint? And sometimes it's a balance of what commissions have come up. And they've gotten to a point where the commissions are almost 50-50 with clouds and flowers as a split. So that's I find that really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. And do you find that, do you sort of feel like one day you're feeling a certain way and you feel like you need to be painting clouds today? Or do you feel like the sort of more, I guess the flowers are a little bit more formal, aren't they, in some way, or more precise, would you say?
Yeah, they probably are. And to be honest, they're a little bit, in that way, I can sort of just sink into painting them without thinking too much. I think the clouds require me to stand back from my work more and examine the composition as a whole. And I think, if anything, that has strengthened my floral work. So it's become a practice that I've sort of moved across both areas. I don't come in and think I really need to paint a flower today, or I really need to paint a cloud. I find I just need to paint. And so it's what's prepared and what's there and what deadlines are due. And I'd happily paint either of them forever. It feels like at the moment. Ask me in 10 years and maybe that will have changed. But right now, if I was only doing all flowers at the moment, I'd probably be okay with that. And same with clouds. And I've gone through periods of doing just one or just the other.
I mean, if we could just talk about the flowers first and then we'll come back to the clouds. What was it that actually got you into painting flowers?
I had been painting lots of nudes before that. And I think that was a real safe area for me because I'd done so much life drawing through school and then uni. And then that was the thing that I continued while I was working. And I'd done an exhibition, I don't think it was great, of nudes, but it was good because it had me working and it had me put together a body of work. But I didn't feel like I'd found that thing. I enjoyed making them because it was making art, but I wasn't passionate about that as a subject matter. And I was quite stuck in my job at that time. I felt probably a bit trapped and like I was just going to work and coming home. It was this rinse repeat cycle. And I'd walked past this particular florist one day. There's this amazing florist called Vazette in Melbourne that I think a few people would know. And I'd seen the way that light was hitting the flowers on this particular day, and it had just really struck me. And I'd always had a bit of a passion for photography, which I'd credit to my sister and also my husband. He's really great with the camera. And so that had always been a part of my life. And then, so I bought those flowers and took some photos of it and just thought, I want to try and capture this in paint. And it was detailed enough and hard enough that I couldn't think about anything else when I was painting. And it was that side of it, that sort of escapism side of it that I really loved. That when I was painting, I wasn't thinking about all of the work that was due. I wasn't thinking about my job. I wasn't thinking about anything else than putting paint on canvas. And I loved getting lost in that. To this day, that's still probably my favorite part of being an artist, is that when I'm painting, it's like the rest of the world sort of disappears in a way.
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling. And so you made that first floral painting, and did you think, oh, this is good, I'm liking this?
The first one was horrible.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
think I scrapped it and started again, but I knew I wanted to. I'd found that thing that held my interest.
Yeah.
The next one was better. The next one made it into my first floral show. And it was learning to really slow down and do things slowly and properly. I am a person that talks fast, thinks fast, is always doing a million things at once. And so doing one thing slowly was a real challenge for me
Mm.
and is a mindset that I'm slowly adopting into other areas. I think that
Yeah.
just because you can multitask doesn't mean you should. I think for me, often it means I do many things badly. And learning to do one thing well is such a challenge that I enjoy it
Yeah.
sometimes.
And I guess that's a nice thing about having just the two series, that you're sort of really honing in and slowing down and focusing and developing that one or two areas, which would be good. And I guess that sort of mindset would helps you with the rest of your life in a way, sort of learning and practicing through your art practice to, you know, just slow down a little bit and, smell the roses, as they say.
Yeah. And I feel like I've been saying that for a while, but I feel like I'm only just starting to take it on board personally. I feel like I'm learning that lesson so slowly, but
Yeah.
it is starting to sink in.
Mm. Yeah, would do. And the process for your floral works, um, it's really interesting to see the way you work. You do capture quite often process shots on Instagram, which I always find so fascinating. And some of your paintings are just massive. I just can't imagine how you can approach something so huge and so kind of, something that would take you so long. So how do you actually start by, how do you choose the flowers in the beginning? Do you photograph them? And yeah, can you talk us through your process?
Taking my own photos has always been a really important part of that process. And so and creating an interesting composition from the outset. So from the photography point, it has to be a composition that I'm really interested in, where the shapes and the light interact in an interesting way, and that it's I think that's dictated the flowers that I've chosen in a lot of way. They have to be translucent enough that the light shines through them. I'm going to try some orchids next month, which will be interesting because they are a lot less transparent, but it's this interest in textures, I guess. They've got a really beautiful sheen to them that I want to try and capture. So I've worked with some amazing florists. When I first moved to Dunedin, I met a local lady called Charlotte who ran a shop called Rock and Rosie, which she's now shut down the shop front. But it's been really great to work with local people sourcing local flowers. And I now have been working with Jolene from Estelle Flowers, who I am just loving working with her. And I'll often go down with a list of flowers that I'm interested in. And a lot of the florists have got such an amazing skill for arranging flowers. And often I'll let them do what they want. I'll say, I'd like these flowers. Here's some inspiration shots. Create what you think. And then I'll often bring it back to the studio and I will rearrange it, because they will arrange a flower arrangement for it to be seen from all angles or for it to be seen front on. And often I will shoot from top down. And so I need to move them a little bit to get what I
Mm.
want, or to arrange it so that I find that I'm so drawn to triangular or circular compositions. And I'm always creating a flow in my work with the flowers. And so having something fill an entire screen of a photo or an entire canvas, to me, it's got to work in terms of how the viewer's eyes would travel across the painting. And then recently, Jolene's been coming around and arranging some things for me on the floor, and then I'll move them and I can shoot them top down, which is so much fun. And it's sort of
Mm.
creating collaborations with people that know what they can get. So I had a really fun commission request recently where she had a list of flowers that all meant something to a different person in her life. And some of them are in season now, and some of them will be in season in 3 months. So I'm going to have to stitch the photo together on Photoshop. But the first three, she was like, well, I can get Jolene was saying, one of my florists has got this in her garden, and I think my sister-in-law's got this. And then she was able to source the peonies from me from a local. And I love that. I love that so much of it comes locally, and then it's shot by me, and I've got my hands touching so much of the process. Last week, my studio was full of so many flowers. I feel like I should have an event or something sometimes because it feels like they go to waste. And I'm often giving them away to anyone that comes into contact with me, which is great.
Mm. Oh, you can
So
never have too many flowers in the house, I reckon.
you
And
can't.
this time of the year with the peonies, which we all love. And I love something you put on Instagram with what do we do with all the petals that fall off the peonies, which are so gorgeous. They're just such beautiful objects, aren't they, those petals?
I
Yeah.
haven't done it. I've literally just got a pile of petals sitting on my desk in the studio at the moment. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with them, but
It would actually be interesting to arrange the petals or even just like dump the petals and then paint that, just the petals.
yeah,
Have you ever
I
thought of that?
created some fun reels for a promotion for a show once using petals, where I spelled out the name of the show and had them like falling down. But no, I think it's just a time factor.
Mm. And then what happens with the flowers after that? You photograph them. What happens next?
I always do Photoshop a little bit. I tend to make them darker. I might change the composition a little bit within Photoshop if it's not sitting the way I want it to sit. Um, and then I will usually grid up and draw up a canvas. I used to use a projector a little bit with the big paintings, but I find these days if I set up a projector and start drawing something up, like without a doubt, like half an hour in, one of my kids will wake up in the evening and then something gets bumped and it's so hard to get it all lined up that actually going back to the old way of using a grid is just takes me less time now because I can just pick it up and put it down with the way that time allows.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that makes sense. And you make that drawing. Do you underpaint first and then draw over the top?
underpaint first for me. And I get asked a lot of questions about the colors that I use with my underpaint. And sometimes it's a really deliberate choice. Like I'll choose a really vibrant pink. Sometimes it's just the paint that I've got left on my palette because
Mm,
I don't like wasting anything. And so sometimes you get some great colors that way as well, but I've got no idea how to reproduce that color. And I think
yeah.
that's lovely and means that each piece is kind of different in a way as well.
Mm. And
Yes,
so you underpaint and then draw, and then you start working in sections. Is that right? Or do the background first?
I don't have a set way. It depends how if I've got lots of Payne's grey on my palette, I'll do the background first before the paint dries. If I don't, then I'll just start from the top left and work my way across and down. I've not I mean, to me, that whole layer is going to get filled. So whether I do the background first or the petals first has never made a profound difference enough that I've made it a structure for myself.
Mm. And it's not like you can tell, oh, she's done the background first or last. Because some artists are quite specific about always doing the background first.
Yeah, I've never found it made that much of a difference to me. And I think because I do so many layers, and the first layer is really the black's not even that black. So it's going to need a few more layers. I think building upon it slowly means that I'll get the blending the way I want it eventually anyway.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then you just keep building up, and then it's the last final details that you enjoy the most. Is that right?
Yeah, so and I've found over time that when I'm doing those underpainting layers, I try and use bigger brushes so that I don't get too obsessed with doing the details too early because you don't see any detail I do in the underpainting, you won't see in a few more layers anyway. So I found that I used to waste a lot of time that way, trying to make the underpainting too perfect. And I both enjoy and don't enjoy that process because the underpainting, it's not at that level that I want it to be at. But it's when I've blocked in that whole thing and I can see the potential for where I can get it to that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens when I get to the last couple of layers of painting where I am focusing on the detail. That is a part that I really love because I find I can get really lost in that. But also that's where I think I can get really frustrated as well because that's where the tricky bits come into it. That's where the painting can get challenging and creating light in the right way or detail in the right way. It's a beautiful challenge. It's the bit that keeps me coming back, but it's definitely tricky and rewarding in the same weight.
Yeah. And when you actually achieve it and you're happy with it, then there's nothing more satisfying, I imagine. Yeah. And so you talked before about your works being realistic, but not hyper realistic. What do you mean by that?
I think there's a style of painting where I would say hyperreal that mine is not. I just don't think mine are hyperreal. I think I like the imperfections in it, and that's what makes it mine. I think that you can still see brushstrokes and they're not photorealistic, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's another level. It's a different style of painting, and I've not yearned to get it there. I think that sort of perfection wouldn't suit my personality. I think a lot of people see me as being really structured as a person, but there's enough chaos there that trying to create something photorealistic would drive me insane. I don't think that for me, aiming for that sort of perfection wouldn't be constructive, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it does. And with that photo that you have, how important is it for you to actually achieve a pretty much a replica of that photo?
Not, I mean, up until a certain point, up until the last couple of layers, and that's probably where I let go of the photo a little bit with the clouds more so than with the florals. So with the florals, I use the photo pretty heavily. Um, but at the end, I think it's important to stand back and look at it as a painting because I don't find for me in the way that I work that things in a photograph don't always translate into a painting. And sometimes it'll be a line in the painting. So if, for example, a stem and then the line of a petal line up too perfectly, it can be really distracting to look at as a viewer. And sometimes you need to make those adjustments so that the painting works. And I think if you get too caught up in the photo, it doesn't let you do the best painting you could do,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. It doesn't always translate. Yeah. And talk to us about color. You do approach color in a gorgeous way, and having flowers as your initial inspiration is helpful because they're also beautifully colored. But what are you thinking when you're planning color?
Do you know, it wasn't something that I had thought of in a really, they weren't really informed choices. They're much more instinct based. I hadn't thought it was, it was super interesting coming into my last show where I had clouds and flowers and I saw them as these really different things and seeing them together in that room, the colors really played off each other and complemented each other. And I had never thought about choosing a color palette. I think that color palette chose me in a way. And I had several people say that in that past year, I'd only really dressed in those colors.
Really?
Um, and so I think those things can be a stage in your life, or maybe it's a long term thing. For me, that's with the colors that I was playing in at that time. And I think I'm moving away from that a little bit now. But then I don't it's not a planned choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's I see the way flowers or the colors in a composition will work together, and it's something that appeals to me, but not in a way that I've chosen. Like sometimes I will take a flower out and not understand why, and later on I think, oh, that color didn't work in there.
Yeah. And what makes you think you're going to do something quite monochromatic or sort of a limited color palette? And then other times your color palettes are quite multicolored. So what is it just purely based on the flowers that you can access at the time?
Sometimes it's about composition. Sometimes I'll change the color of a flower within Photoshop because it doesn't work with what I want that painting to say. And I
Mm,
think while it is instinct, I think it's also important to make those choices. So they're definitely informed compositions, but when I'm choosing the flowers or if the florist has given me an arrangement, but something doesn't work for me visually, I think you've got to follow those instincts. If I don't like the way that sits, I don't like the way that jars or, um, yeah.
mm. It's so fascinating, isn't it? And there are quite a few floral artists around. Um, what do you think make the Julie Battisti floral paintings different to the others?
I think it's tricky. And I think it's something that has probably plagued me a little bit in the past few years is worrying that I'm one of many. But I think I can only stay true to what I want to create. And for me, I don't know I don't know how to describe that, but I can only hope that the little flourishes that are mine, whether that's in a composition, I tend not to have. I've played around this year with a few different things, but what sings to me is when I don't have them situated in a vase. I like that. sense of floating almost that you can achieve. I like the fact that I really enjoy playing with compositions. I've had a few that would work in different directions. So I've had a few square compositions that could have worked in multiple orientations. I love playing with compositions, and I hope that that is strong enough to be identifiably mine.
Yeah, I really think they are. I think that you can tell it's one of your works.
But I don't think there's much to be gained from comparing your work to others as well, because
Yeah.
I think you see it really beautifully when you go to those like paint and sip classes and that sort of thing, or in a life drawing class when you can all be looking at the same thing. You can all be drawing with the same materials, looking at the same object, and it will be different. So, in the same way that I can say, gosh, there's so many people doing peonies on dark backgrounds, I also think there's going to be people that like my style. There's going to be people that don't like my style. And I've just got to be happy and content with that and not comparing and getting lost in that, because it, as much as it is natural and it happens sometimes and you can't help it, I try not to, because I don't think it's a particularly healthy mindset to get yourself stuck in.
No, not at all. And I think that you've created something that is unique to yourself, but you're so right, not comparing. And, there's lots of people who paint sheds and lots of people who paint portraits, and, everyone brings something individual to their work, because it's your mark making. It's your work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. So how did you get onto the clouds, and how did that fit around the florals at the beginning?
I think I'd had that idea in my head for a while, but it didn't really sink in until we moved to Rawene. And if you've ever been, have you been there?
Yes, love it.
It is, we've never had views like we had there. And we probably will, I'll never have a view that amazing ever again. And it is a tiny little town.
Mm.
But everyone that lives there almost, it's kind of situated on a hill. And so you either have a view of the sunset or the sunset or the sunrise over water. And I spent so many of my days watching the sky there. And I was quite interested in the fact that the clouds and the sky look different up there than they did in Melbourne. There's something, and it's taken me a while, I think, to be able to actually pinpoint what that is. And there's something about the flatness of Melbourne that makes the sky look further away. And
Yeah.
also the formation of the clouds and the storms are different over there, whereas what was happening. But it's also, I mean, it's easy for me to articulate now because enough time has passed. And I think when I started them, it was an impulse that I wanted to paint these clouds, and I had no idea if I could do it. And that challenge was probably quite interesting for me. But now I look back now, and I think the way that I am thinking about it these days is it did come from a sense of being homesick. It came from wanting to create a connection between New Zealand and Australia. I think I fell into wanting to paint clouds again during COVID, when I felt really far away from home and I needed to feel close. And so I think there is that whenever I'm feeling far away from family or friends, I've got a few of my best friends now live overseas. And so when something's happening with them, I'm always more driven to want to create clouds out of a sense of something that connects us.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, because it does really connect, doesn't it? So it feels like a kind of lifeline between you and someone far away.
Yeah. And I think the older I get, and I think since having family, that sense of connection to my own family and friends has become more important. And I think I probably didn't appreciate my family enough as a kid. Like, I always thought I had this big, noisy Italian family. And I think I was so driven to be independent as a young adult that it was sort of, I needed to create some space to become myself. And now all I think about, especially because we love our life here in New Zealand and I wouldn't change that, but I do feel the hardest thing for me is being far from my family.
Yeah.
And so the painting the clouds in a way is very much about connection.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, you must get homesick. I can't really imagine being away from family, especially when you have little ones. It's tough. Do you imagine ever returning to Melbourne?
I'm not sure. I think the lifestyle here for me with kids is super appealing. I don't know that we could have there what we have here, like being able to walk the kids to school. I've got a beautiful studio. At some stage, we might move somewhere else for a year or so, but I think Dunedin will always be home now. But, these things change. our house where we are now, we see as our forever home. Um, my poor family probably don't want to hear that, but I've been very lucky in that my parents have been able to visit a
Mm,
lot, and I try
yeah.
and get home once a year, which is really lovely. And I think you've just got to take those things when you get them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easier now with FaceTime and, you know, communicating through video does help with a son on the other side of the world. I get that. Just spoke to him this morning, actually, which was nice. Yeah. Anyway, it's not about him. Do you think that you would be the same artist if you were still in Melbourne?
No, probably not. I'm not sure. I like to think I would have come to the clouds anyway, because I am interested in textures and light and that sort of thing. And I feel like they have really enriched my flowers doing the clouds. I don't know that you could be. I think all of the things that have happened are what's led me here. And if I'd
Yeah.
taken a different path, of course it would be different, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think you are just intrinsically sort of affected by the place that you're in,
Mm,
creatively, I find. Sort of by osmosis almost, you're not always aware, but you you do end up, maybe going down a different path depending on where you are placed.
yeah, I mean, not all flowers are going to survive in Dunedin, but then I do have access to other flowers that I never would have heard of or seen before.
Mm.
And I think you've just got to take it is what it is.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it's hard to know, really, isn't it? Exactly what
mm.
would have happened if you'd been somewhere else. And your titles sometimes can be song lyrics. Um, is that just for the clouds, or how do you work out your titles for your flowers and for your clouds?
So the flowers, it's often a song lyric, and it's what has been playing in the studio or what's been knocking around in my head. There was a while after my first kid that a lot of them were after nursery rhymes. So it was sort of just whatever was stuck in there at the moment. And often it has been what's in the background while I've been painting. The clouds, I tend to give human name. There will be just as many people that like that I give the clouds human names as don't like that. And that's
Mm.
fine. But for me, the clouds almost have personalities. So sometimes it's based on a person or a fact. Like I had one where it was this cloud that was undulating and reforming. And I had read this thing about a Beverly clock that almost like worked on momentum going back and forth. And so that cloud was called Beverly. Or,
Mm.
there's lots of there's a story behind each one. And that story is usually kind of personal to me in some little way. Um, but I don't always feel the need to tell the story of that person, because I think everyone can just see that cloud as a bob, and that can mean whatever they want it to mean, or it
Yeah, I
could
love
just,
that.
yeah. And I think,
Mm.
I like like giving it a personality, but leaving it um, open enough for people to
Yeah.
see their own personalities in that.
Yeah, and to sort of connect in their own way or tell their own stories. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting, and it's kind of surprising. It's a nice surprise for a cloud painting to have a human name.
I remember joking around with my old art mentor, Willie, that I really liked the idea of people flicking through a cloud catalogue of paintings, almost like a Tinder date, and seeing all of these different people on there that they would like click that they liked or not.
Swipe left
Yeah.
or right, whatever it is. Yeah, that's so good. I love that. And do you feel like your two series are evolving or your work's evolving at all?
Yeah, I hope so. I am about to start trying to push the flowers in a slightly different direction for me, and for everyone else, it'll probably just look like my work. But to me, it feels different. And that's exciting. And likewise with the clouds, I experimented with adding in a small part of the landscape last year. And I think I really enjoyed that, but that's not a part that I'm going to continue. And I think there's so much scope within both of those subject matters that I can't see myself ever not pushing them even 1 degree in a different direction
Yeah,
every time I do something.
absolutely. And you have been experimenting with putting flowers into vessels like gin bottles.
The gin bottles are fun. and I still am not sure what I'm going to do with those. I don't know whether I will. Yeah, that they at the start of this year. Can't remember, one year to the next is getting a bit scary now that we're in November.
I know.
After doing the exhibition, I just needed to play and do a couple of things that were a bit fun and that had no purpose or direction. And so I did a painting of some flowers in a vase, and I did the gin bottle paintings. And I think I'm learning from each of them. And painting glass was a new, fun, weird challenge. But also they are small paintings. Like they're probably, I don't know what they are. I'm bad with that sort of thing. Maybe 40 by 60. And so there was something that I could do during the school holidays and complete while the kids were home. And sometimes it's nice just to have a small little problem to put your mind to that's a bit different. So
yeah, absolutely. I can see I can see potential with that kind of thing, with collaborations with companies. I don't know if that's something that you've ever considered, but I love the idea of sort of bringing your florals to something quite sort of commercial and modern. It's quite a lovely mix.
I'm not done with them yet. I've got an idea of doing a really big one with a lot of different bottles and a single stem in each, but it'll have to wait until I've got time. So there's just lots of ideas ticking around in there, and sometimes I get time to experiment with them, and that is lots of fun.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's balancing the experimenting time with the money-making time. So speaking of the money-making time, you do a lot of commissions, don't you?
I mean, I'd probably do, it's probably works out about 50-50 commissions and gallery work. And at the moment, I'm doing a few because I pushed them out last year while I was getting a show ready. And now I'm trying to get them done, and then I'll put them on hold for a while I get another show ready. I usually try and spread them out equally, but sometimes it's just the timing works the way it works.
It's something that you enjoy, because some artists are quite anti.
And that's I think everyone's got to do it their own way. And a lot of people, if commissions add that much extra pressure or hassle or kill some of the creative joy for them, then I think it's not right for you to do. For me, I think over the past so many years, I've been able to change the structure of them to suit me. And the way that I do it is probably not going to suit everyone, because quite often I won't take a deposit until we've both agreed on an image, and I'll only put forward an image that I want to paint. So I managed to retain quite a lot of creative control with my commissions, which is great. Yeah. And so for me, it feels like I'm painting something that I would have painted anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. So people are saying the kind of thing that they want, and then you go and get the flowers and take the photographs from there and give them options. That's smart. Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's lovely. They do still occasionally feel a little bit more structured, because you are working with what someone else wants at the end of the day. But I always feel like in a world where at the moment it's quite tough, I've got the opportunity, and I'm so lucky to be able to be pushing my skills forward and to be doing what I love, even if a tiny little bit more of it feels more like work than when I'm doing something where I have complete creative control over. But I think that's a nice balance to play with. And for such a long time, I did a lot of other jobs while I was painting to pay the bills. And I think, if the choice is between doing commissions and going back to doing a bit more graphic design and photography for other people, then I will absolutely, hands down, 100% of the time choose the commission.
Absolutely. So I get that. Yeah.
And sometimes I think for other people, it makes more sense for them not to do the commission and to do the work that they can walk in and out of and leave behind at the end of the day and know that that bill's coming in. But I think everyone's got to make that choice for themselves. You've got to figure out what works for you. And
I think some styles of art lend themselves more to commissions than others.
I agree.
And that sort of the idea of flowers, I can imagine how you can kind of please the client, but also stay within your style and the work that you like to make. Yeah. Which is good. And you're with Gallery de Novo in Dunedin and Parnell Gallery in Auckland. How did you establish those connections with those galleries?
I feel like I've gotten so lucky with both galleries. They're so lovely to deal with. And it's interesting because de Novo, me and my heart, like I'd always back before my husband moved to Melbourne, we'd been dating long distance for a long time. And our habit had been to, on a Saturday morning, we'd go to the farmers market in Dunedin and then we'd walk around town and visit the different galleries. And I'd always walked into Novo and loved the way they talked to any visitor to the gallery. And I loved the collection of work there. I've always loved, there's a local artist called Maria Kemp. And I just thought, oh gosh, if I could show my work next to hers, what a dream. When I finally got around to approaching galleries, they were like top of my list because I just loved the way that they spoke to people. And I loved the way that they speak about other artists. And I've always had such lovely compliments from buyers or anyone that's gone in there to ask about my work, that they've always spoken about me so beautifully and well informed. And same thing with Parnell. I think they have been amazing to work with. And actually when I approached them, I had only found out the day before that I was pregnant with my first kid. And so I haven't given them as much work as I would have liked to, because when I started with them, as you know, it's been 5 years of me juggling painting and parenting, and they've been so patient and wonderful to work with. And I've always had such a lovely reception to my work there. And like the team at Novo, I really like working with a gallery that's got a real family connected feel to it. And I don't know, I feel like they've been really patient with me. And every time that I drop off a work, and I usually drop it off and I will list like the 10 things that I think aren't going right with it. Oh, it's not good enough. And they deal with me and my insecurities so beautifully and always make me feel confident at leaving it.
Yeah, and isn't that lovely?
I've always felt like they have been honest with me as well, and we've been able to have some of those tough conversations about pricing and when to do a show. And there have been times when I haven't been like, if I would have loved to have gotten them an extra painting this year, but they've been very, oh, we get it. It's tough juggling all of those things. And
which is so good. I mean, the relationship's so important, isn't it, with your gallery?
I think both galleries have set a really great example of what I want my relationship with my galleries to be like. And that's important to me.
Are you showing it all in your home city of Melbourne?
Not at the moment. After my last, I did have representation in Melbourne for 3 or 4 years, but I actually put that on hold for a while. I felt like I was stretching myself too thin, and I am the sort of person that feels driven to deliver, and I was probably 3 galleries is probably too many. And after my last show, I've got a friend of the family who I consider to be quite an important mentor to me, and she's come along to all of my big shows, which has always been amazing to me. And I remember after the last one sitting down with her and saying, I think I want to make these next moves and I want to do this and that. And she sat down with me, and she's always been a great truth teller, and said, what are you rushing for? You've got a young family. Your time is really precious. The last few years have been challenging for a variety of personal reasons. Your career's not going anywhere. You can slow down and it won't go away. And I found that a really difficult conversation to hear, because I think for a long while I've been worried about losing momentum. But actually it's what I needed to hear. And it was a really tough decision to leave my Melbourne gallery, especially when things were selling. But it's been the right choice, 100%. For me personally, I needed to give myself permission to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, what lovely advice. You know, it's really lovely to get somebody you trust and love to be able to kind of put that sort of input into your brain and just help you get that different perspective. Because, you know, as artists, we're so sort of in our own heads, you know, and it's nice just to get that other perspective.
I feel so lucky. And I think the conversations that I've had in the creative kind have done nothing but cement that thought process for me, in that this is just the beginning. And when I talk to people that are in terms of time in the career ahead of me, and they talk about the potential of time and the fact that we don't have to retire from this career. I've you know, potentially got a lot of time ahead of me. It does take some of the sense of rushing out of it, and means that I feel like I can slow down and make the right decisions, as opposed to just making the quickest, best next one.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Oh, you do very well to juggle all your different things that you do. And as a mum of young kids, You probably won't know yourself once they go to school.
Here's hoping.
Fingers crossed. You're not allowed to introduce any new stuff. It's like, okay, I have more time.
Yeah, I never know what to do with time when I get it, though. I think I am a shocking filler of time.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. Like if my business Creative Matters is kind of under control and I've planned everything's up sorted for the next few months, then I'm like, okay, now what can I do to fill my time instead of saying to myself, great, I'm so organized, I can just chill. I'm just not good with that, which is
Yeah.
kind of mad in a way.
I don't know. I'm trying less to berate myself about it and more just to accept that that's possibly how I am.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. It's just how it is, and that's fine. Fill your time.
I kind of see echoes of that throughout. Like there was a reason why I wanted to study two things at once.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, to me, it feels I'm trying less to fight it less now. It doesn't mean it always happens, but I'm
No.
trying.
Yeah. And you're doing well, to be having the podcast as well. Do you find that takes a lot of your time?
I'm trying to structure it in a way that it doesn't, so that I can keep enjoying it and so that it's not as stressful time wise. Because I find the format that I'm doing now is easier to, it's not as stressful time wise because I'm recording quite far in advance, like 4 to 6 months now, which
Wow.
means I can then space out when I edit because you can't control when someone gets sick and an interview gets postponed, or some weeks I might have lots of time for editing and some weeks I have none. And so
Mm.
having deadlines that are too close doesn't, I find that really difficult. That's when I find it challenging. Um, and most people have been, actually everyone has been amazing to work with in terms of timing. And there's been so many interviews that have been moved because I've got a sick kid, they've got a sick kid,
Yeah.
and being able to be flexible just takes so much of the stress out of it. And
Mm.
also, it's a podcast and seasons are dictated by, and it's having that realization that I'm the one dictating the timing from the seasons. And so if I need to push it out by a few weeks, no one's gonna care.
Yeah, I know. That's so true.
Um
I always feel like I need to publish every Monday morning, early. Sometimes it's in the afternoon and I'm just like, oh, I need to work Sunday night and just get that finalized. And George is like, why? Like it's fine if it's a bit later. And I always have these visions of people, on their Monday morning early walk, like, where's the episode? And I'm sure that's not actually the case. It's just like, yeah, it's crazy. It's just getting that right balance, really.
I think I've definitely hit a done is better than perfect balance with the podcast. I've
Mm.
stopped aiming for getting it right every time. There's been so many times where I've found the audio situation hasn't been perfect. And I think, do you know what? I don't think anyone cares that much. The only
No,
one that's stressing over it is me. And
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, totally. Well, are we on to the question time, do you think, Julie?
sure.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I can't even remember what I've said. So sign of a good
That's funny.
conversation.
Yeah, most guests say that actually. And then they start thinking, oh my God, did I actually say this or did I say that? Or should have said this? Or start totally overthinking after,
Mm.
between sort of actually recording and then publishing. It's very common. No, you've said lots of great things. I think we've got a lovely sort of overview of your practice and of who you are, which is really nice for your audience, your creative kind audience, because you probably don't give as much away about your practice when you're talking to other people. So yeah, it's been lovely hearing all about it. So let's go on to the questions. What would you say to your younger artistic self?
I find this question really tricky to answer because I think if I'd given myself the perfect advice when I was younger, I don't know that I would have listened to it. I was probably that kind of a young person. I think I'd probably like to tell myself that mostly I think that you don't need to be for everyone. Like just be yourself, and the people that like you will like you for all of your imperfections. And not to worry about the other parts. You can't change someone's mind if they like you or your work. And so just be you. And I think the other thing that I'm really probably quite passionate about is that is to get really passionate about learning. I don't, yeah. I think my aim isn't to get good at one thing. It's to get good at learning how to do things, because I think that opens up a whole new world for yourself.
What would you find is the most challenging aspect of being an artist?
Um, so much of it is challenging. I think it is an amazing career. And I think the best and the worst of it comes from being vulnerable. Like, I think your best work comes when you're vulnerable with yourself, but showing my work, I think I find really difficult. And I try and get past that, but at the same time, I think that sense of being a little bit uncomfortable with it means I'm doing the right thing. Like that challenge is what makes me feel like I'm must be on the right path. If I'm a little bit uncomfortable, I know that I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And do you have artists who inspire you in some way?
So many. I find that, again, it's one of those, like, when I was younger, I was absolutely inspired by, you know, Caravaggio and Rachel Rush and Artemisia Gentileschi and Cressida Campbell. I could keep listing them. Georgia O'Keeffe. Bill Henson was huge when I was at school. I don't know if he's a big photographer here. He's probably more well known in Oz. Like, really cinematic, dramatic lighting. And these days there's so many. I find I'm really interested in people that look at motherhood at the moment. So Cindy Rizza and Lisa Sorgini and Lily Waters. Not that Lily Waters is looking at motherhood so much, but so many people, and landscapes at the moment have been a real interest for me. And so Maria Kemp, who I mentioned before, and Sarah Langdon, and the way that she captures the New Zealand landscape, but also like Australian landscape painters like Johnny Kay and Carly LaSurf, I find so inspiring. But it changes every day. I feel like I'm inspired by someone new, and I think that's the best part of social media, is getting that exposure from people from different places so easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find seeing other people's work is amazing. If I can see it in person, even better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so different, isn't it, when you actually see something in person? It just has a whole different effect, really, on you, you know.
Yeah.
And why are you making the kind of work you're making?
I mean, everything that we've discussed in the pod, because I have to. I think because that drive to paint and wanting to capture light and texture and I guess get those visuals out of my head and give them a wider audience. I feel like it's my version of what I see, and being able to show that to people is a real special thing. I think I feel really lucky to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and your work is absolutely gorgeous, Julie. I just think both the clouds and the flowers are so beautiful. And you do have a really loyal following, I think, and you're very much loved, no doubt, as a person, but also as an artist. And it has been such a joy to meet you. I hear your voice a lot on my walks, and to actually meet you and hear your story has been really lovely. I've loved it. So thank you very much for being on the podcast, and hopefully you can join us in the show next year.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun to do. It's such a weird thing being the guest on a podcast. I found it really challenging, but it's been really lovely, and thank you for making it such an easy process.